Your name is Dietes Vienna, and when are you going to tell him? The question keeps hiding behind corners to pop out at you, sneak into your mind when you let down your guard, ambush you when you take off your coat and set down your bag. You are quite sure by now that he didn't know. Everything you know about Alidor's death came from context clues, from Mondes's trial as it was broadcast on television, from the way the young man bristled at his name, cursing it. You're pretty sure you know how it happened. He had been 6. You remember the weekend. Sometimes, when you were busy, Alidor dropped Mondes off at the Fleet Archives for the night. The ones in the town you resided in doubled as a public library of sorts, as free pupa care when Alidor was working. You are pretty sure that's where he found it. The old fleet propaganda on Corsica, that's where he must have read it. He must have confronted his ancestor about being a spy. Maybe Alidor denied it, maybe not. Either way, Mondes must not have been satisfied with the answer. Then he must have freed his Lucis. The worm ate him. Then both him and Alidor were thought to be dead in the aftermath. You're pretty sure that's what happened, because when Mondes spoke of his father, he still called Alidor's clients his friends, the same silly euphemism Rosato had used with him back in the day. He still named his career as spy, and he doesn't even seem to realize how childish he sounds, but he was a child. He was 6 weeks old when he killed his father. So when are you going to tell him? Sometimes you came up with practical reasons why you had to. The orchestra contest, the press circuit. The subject of Alidor was bound to come up in the press circuit, and the reporters knew. He wouldn't want to be blindsided by a question about it, right? He wouldn't want to look like a fool, but that's not really why you had to tell him. That's you wondering how to phrase it, wondering if you came to him so pragmatically he wouldn't be angry at you for breaching the subject in the first place, but maybe he would be more angry. Maybe he'd think you cared more about the contest than how he felt. There's no winning, you told yourself. It won't go down easy no matter how or when or why you tell him. That's why you hadn't told him. You were afraid. Not for yourself, but for him. He was a deeply empathetic young man. You were sure in one way or another he'd care, and caring might destroy him. He still feels so delicate, a boy balanced on the head of a pin. It doesn't truly feel like he had processed the events of the last sweep, much less the last 10 of them. But he'd want to know. You had told Alidor to tell him sweeps ago, and he had refused. Funny how you absorbed his role in the conversation when he died. Now instead of arguing with Rosato, you argued with yourself. This conversation had been shelved so long it had rotted to its very core. It was Alidor's curse, and he passed it on to you. Bastard. Bastard. Why didn't he ever just tell him? He might as well have killed himself. This place looks a lot smaller, Mondes says, dragging you out of your internal turmoil as he stands, feet together like a tin soldier at the door. Then I remember. Well, you scoff. You are shorter then, you reply. But he doesn't seem satisfied with this answer. You remembered how he had first reacted when Alidor brought him home to this hive, even if he was too young to fully recall. Mondes had grown up in a world where you were lucky if a building had 2 stories, had all its walls, had lights or electrical or plumbing. The pupa had taken one glance at this place with its electric thermostat and refrigerator and bathtub and air conditioning, and immediately concluded his ancestor was rich. He had been just on the precipice of noticing the dissonance, how skewed his measures of poverty were in comparison to the average troll when he ran away from home. It is unforgivingly blatant to him now, and you're sure that's why he bristles. You unlock the door, shuffling inside, and he stares at what is a fairly average town hive, done up fancy and clean, sure, with working utilities, 2 stories, and a dash of the pretentious flair Alador had for interior design, but nothing special. It is familiar, these high ceilings and well-organized bookshelves, lighting fixtures, and white cabinets covered with a layer of dust. But his eyes, more worldly, older now, cannot help but trace the stains on the ceiling, the cheap plastic of an abandoned coffee machine, and notice, against his will, that his ancestor's home is about 1/5 of the size of the one in which he currently resided. He does not like how this makes him feel. His ancestor betrayed his caste, his friends, his quadrants, Corsica, for this? He walks room to room, trying to place his memories of cold white banisters, large ballrooms, spacious balconies, and water features, and find none of them are here. He realizes with dawning discomfort he is remembering orchestra halls. He is remembering parties. He had spent so much of his childhood in them, his memories of the decadent buildings and that of his ancestor's home blended together. I guess it was all the same to him then. He had felt like a visitor in both places. You try for a moment to think of what to say, something to say. The music studio is on the 2nd floor, you begin. It'll probably be there. I know where the music studio is, he said softly, marching up the stairs with gentle footsteps so silent you could hardly be sure they touched the ground. Your words tumble back down your throat, back into the washing machine of your brain as you pick up your cane and follow him. The 2 of you had come here for a trophy. In an unsurprising attempt to discredit your protege, the Alternian Western Orchestra Academy claimed to have lost the record of Mondes winning an Outstanding Talent Award from a contest put on by them when he was young. Something the both of you knew damn well he had won. The Highbloods were trying to tell the press you were buttering up the kid's resume erroneously. You were certain they had just destroyed the paper. The 2 of you had argued how to handle it. Mondes had no proof with him. The olive blood had nothing but his cello on his back when he left his ancestor's hive. But you had told him, eventually, that Alador had left his old place to you when he went. And God willing, the physical trophy was probably still up on the wall with all of Mondes's other ones, covered in dust. You never fixed up the place, resold it, even got rid of all of Alador's old things. The first few weeks after it happened, you had kept coming back and lingering in the kitchen, pouring out a glass of wine and playing music, sitting there as if it was just any other night, any moment now. Alador would turn the corner complaining about a client, or Mondes would be running up to show you a bug he had found. The fantasy is harder to have now. The layers of disrepair around you remind you how long it has actually been. And Mondes is with you, grown up in ever-present reminder of the sweeps you had lost him. You often wondered if things would have been different had you somehow realized he was alive all the way back then. You're not as fast as you used to be. By the time you make it upstairs to the music studio, Mondes is already up there. He has unfolded a large black trash bag and is simply tossing all his old orchestra trophies into it indiscriminately. You step into the room just as he grabs the last one. The man ties the bag and hoists it onto his back. Okay, he says, let's go. You're really gonna make me go right back down all those stairs, you complain. You didn't have to follow me, he says, slipping past you through the doorway. If you don't say something now, you never will. Mondes, you say. He pauses. Am I forgetting something? No, you sigh, but can I talk to you? There's something I've been meaning to tell you. Sure, he says. We've got the whole car ride home. You might want to sit down, kid, you say. He remains frozen, his back to you, for a moment before silently, frustratedly, walking back into the music studio and sitting down. Okay, he says. This might be difficult for you to hear, you begin. Okay. I'm not trying to upset you or blame you for anything. You were a child who made the only choice he could with the information he had. Whatever it is, just get it over with, he says, almost sounding bored. I'm not trying to imply anything about who was right or wrong by telling you. I just think you deserve to know, that's all. Just say it, he replies. I'm trying to brace you. I could not be more braced, he says, crossing his arms. You pause, inhaling. Your father wasn't a spy, you say. Whatever he was expecting, this doesn't seem to be it. You try to trace the tiny micro-expressions of his eyes as he narrows them. What? He says quietly. I don't blame you for thinking that, you say, raising your arms in surrender. You didn't have any reason to believe any different, but I read it in a newspaper, he says, sitting up a little, bristling. Exactly, Mondes, a fleet newspaper, you begin. Stands up. I literally saw him meeting with High Bloods for work all the time, he snaps. I don't think you saw what you thought you saw, you say, as gently as you can, but he is glaring daggers at you. That doesn't make any sense, he says, as if waiting for another point to refute another explanation to be made. Sit back down, Mondes, you plead. Explain yourself, he insists. I don't know where to start, you say aimlessly, trying to organize all the information in your head. You're getting too old for this. The beginning, Mondes answers. You inhale. When your father was born, you start. 500 sweeps ago. I don't need his whole life story. I don't care, he retorts, his voice cracking ever so slightly, despite having prompted you to say that. Mondes, the rest of it won't make sense without this context, you sigh. Will you just sit down and let me finish? Just let me get through the story, you plead. He stares at you for a long moment before slowly walking back and sitting down in the chair. 500 sweeps ago, your father was plucked up by a jade from the caverns who was called the Matchmaker. He was a pimp, although I'm sure he wouldn't prefer that word, who raised conventionally attractive grubs into the arts and then sold them off to the highest bidder. Your father was one of them, a pianist. He was too smart for that work. A couple decades into it, he gave the Matchmaker the slip, started telling High Bloods he'd see them for a lower premium if they cut the Jade Blood's percentage out of his paycheck. Pocketing the money, the Matchmaker wasn't fond of that. Got Alador imprisoned and sent off to work across the galaxy on Corsica doing menial farm labor until the end of time as punishment. I don't care, Mondes begins, what happened to him in his poopahood. He still shouldn't have... I'm not done, Mondes, please, you say. Another silence passes between you. Anyways, Corsica had its revolution. Wouldn't have happened without your father. He was one of the founding generals of the CLS, and he was damn good at it. For a while, they were winning. I know this story, he interrupts. No, you don't, you retort. For a while, they were winning, but eventually the fleet got so frustrated with Hasha Demork playing chicken, they kicked him out of the fleet and reassigned ownership of the colony to Favor Longs. She was a ruthless general, but an even worse propagandist. When the intoxicant inherited Demork's blunder, the first thing she knew she had to break was the ever-threatening, unified will of the Corsican people. Emboldened by every victory, she had to defeat them psychologically. She looked for a weak spot between the Golden Four leaders of Corsica, and she found Alador Rosado, a former prostitute. There are certain narratives that are so deeply ingrained in the authoritarian state that belief of them lies unconscious, and in many of those who oppose the empire. Enduring to fascists in its propaganda and allure, the tale of the promiscuous low-blood gold digger is among them. The intoxicant captured Alador. She somehow got Akali's location from him, through torture or voodoos or any number of ways, it doesn't really matter. And then, after murdering their strongest general, she immediately started pushing out newspapers that Alador had worked for the fleet from the very beginning. He had done no such thing. It was a psyop. The fleet wanted Corsica's little rebellion to eat itself from the inside out. Alador had his defenders, that was never not the case. There are some who would profess Alador's innocence until the night he died, but for others, doubt seeped in. Some found it all too easy to believe Alador had sold them out for a quick dollar. Some were overtaken by paranoia, some were all too eager to lash out at Rosado, who more and more in their memory was always too flirtatious, too quick to anger, too self-centered. Not everyone fell for it, but enough. Their ranks were divided, one half of their generals were gone, everything fell apart. Feyre cut your ancestor loose 20 or so sweeps later. By that time, anyone he loved or believed in him back on Corsica was dead. He was a poor imitation of the man I once knew. I saw him at parties and I could barely believe how little life I saw in his eyes. You should have seen him when he was young. Talented, intelligent, a socialite that had taken the upper classes of society completely by storm. Uncompromising in his politics, uncompromising in his art. He was a perfectionist in the standards he enforced on himself, and he pushed his music, and he pushed his peers to a higher level. He was Alternian's best pianist, and if there was any justice on this planet, he would have been taught in textbooks. But this was a shadow. This was a nervous wreck who ended every other breath with a cigarette. He was penniless. He went back to making money the only way he knew how. Mondes has gone silent by this point, so still it was difficult to tell if he was breathing. His expression guarded, as if some point during this monologue he had checked out completely, retreating behind a wall of indifference, strong enough to keep his emotions in, but not enough to keep your words out. The intoxicant called him up to tell him she was blowing up his planet, and that his descendant was on it. He tried to argue with her, but she drew a line in the sand. She would save only you, and she would only do it for a ridiculous amount of money she knew Alador couldn't pay. He spent the rest of his life from the moment he adopted you paying off that debt. That all is to say, he paused. Your father was not a spy. He met with a lot of high-bloods because he was trying to seduce them, and what you may have mistaken for shameless kissassery was probably just a tired old man, putting on his customer service voice at the end of a long night because he knew damn well he didn't have any other choice. He's still staring, like he has not even processed you were done. Part of him wishes you would continue, just to give him more time, just to free him from the obligation of some kind of response. He presses his hands to his thighs to still them. Eventually, he finds the will to open his mouth. His voice is dangerously even and flat. Why wasn't I told, he says. And here is the first animatic, so you're going to want to look at your screen.
Sing them a riddle, something in minor and slow. Vixen feels just a little familiar, but nobody knows. Listen, take your time, let it shine, sweet Esmeralda. Sing them another, give them a rhythm to keep minutes. Sing them a color, a carnival caramel dream. Patience, let it hurt, let it burn. Sweet
It is 6 sweeps ago. It was not the first time Alador had stayed out later than he initially promised. You were familiar enough with the situation to put Mondes to bed. You tried to swallow your unease as the clock shifts forward through time. The troll you had last seen the man talking to worried you. He had been harassing Rosado and his kid at the gala, and Alador had turned to the tried and true defense mechanism of seduction. You knew he knew how to handle himself. Lord knows how long he had been in this business. But the later into the day it gets, the more doubt seeped into your mind. You are trying not to nod off as you sit at the counter, hands gripped around the cool porcelain cup of black tea that was losing its warmth in your palm. Your eyes are half closed when he returns. You only know someone is walking in because of the sudden blockage of light as he stands in the doorway, casts a long shadow, walking right past you towards the freezer. You blink, trying to wake yourself back up. Before you say anything, he interrupts as your mouth opens, his back towards you as he rummages through the fridge. 50,000 kagers. Messiahs, you sigh. You wring 50,000 kagers out of that man? Are you some kind of witch? I thought he was going to cull you. And he didn't, and he paid me, so who cares? The man sighs, finally retrieving an ice pack, walking over and collapsing into a leaned-back chair in the living room, situating it on his back. You pause, giving up on the cooling tea, picking up your cane to follow him. You're too old to be going after clients like that. I'm not that old, he retorts. You beelined for the freezer, didn't even take off your coat, you say, stepping into the living room. With a sinking pusher, you realize he has a black eye. With an even deeper plunge in your blood pressure, you realize that's not what he was grabbing the ice pack for. When are you going to see a doctor about the back thing, Rosado? When they become free, he bites back sarcastically. Let me get some peas for your face at least, you say, marching back to the kitchen to retrieve some frozen ones. It never used to bother me like this on Corsica, he complains, just to complain. Not even once. She did something to it. All the more reason to see a doctor, you reply, handing him the pea package. Reluctantly, he places it on his face. Well, if it gets worse, he says. This is manageable, he sighs. This, you say, gesturing, is manageable? Yeah, he challenges, like a man with an unusually high tolerance for stress. However many sweeps of war he had lived through set his baseline. I just gotta make it through a couple more decades of this, he says, and I'm off scot-free. Just because you think you can doesn't mean you should, you say, sitting down beside him, sinking into the cloth of the chair cushion. If I do it your way, he gestures, I stop taking high-risk, high-value clients. I slow down. I put down money for medical expenses. I'll be here paying off this debt for 50 more sweeps, instead of 20. I can't wait that long. Why not, you say? You're only 500, Alador. You probably have plenty of sweeps left. He stares at you, disbelievingly, as if some part of him could sense even then this wasn't true. Like he saw the Reaper stalking him in the distance, not knowing which direction it came from, or how, but still making out the changing shape of approaching death in the suffocating fog. Perhaps that is why he cuts this deadline so unforgivingly short. A slit of sunlight peeks through the gap in the window behind him, bisecting the room like a guillotine. I don't know that, he says quietly, turning towards the wall. Rosado, you can't put this stuff off forever, you warn. I'm not waiting forever, I'm waiting 20 sweeps, he argues. When it's all over, he says, leaning back to crack open the window and fumbling for a cigarette while his other hand holds the cold peas to his eye. Sweeps from now, when I'm not in debt to Feyre anymore, when Mondes is safe and off in college, I'll see a doctor. When it's all over, I'll rest. You stare at him, unable to fully explain why this distant deadline he set might as well not exist, might as well be a nebulous forever for all it could help him in this moment. But you talked in circles arguing with him on that front. He was deadlocked. Aren't there other options, you say slowly, glancing around as if checking for listeners. we could be considering. He stares at you, annoyance flashing across his face. Like what? You are a rebel, General Rosado. You're just gonna lay down and take this? His eyes narrow, and he pauses, plucking his cigarette from his mouth and pulling out a napkin, scribbling on it as he speaks. I don't do that anymore, he says, casually lifting the napkin to show you. Shut up, prying ears, it reads in chicken scratch. Right, you say, taking the napkin, grabbing the pen from him. I still think we should consider more options, you narrate, writing. Hive is bugged on the napkin, in exclamation points in stark contrast with your conversational speaking tone. I've considered them, probably more than you have, Vienna, he huffs, writing on the napkin. Not Hive, me. He lifts his arm and gestures at his wristwatch. He pops it open and pulls out a tiny microphone. Faber cracked open my watch while I was sleeping a few nights ago, he warns on the napkin, dropping it on the table. Are you sure about that? You retort, snatching up the napkin forcefully. He closes his eyes as you scribble. There is a tiny creak in the floorboards, and you both turn towards the hall. What are you doing? Asks a confused, sleepy young Mondes as he watches you grapple with the napkin, only hearing the spoken conversation. Alador takes it from you, reading your note. Then get rid of it, dumbass, you had written. Nothing, Mondes, go back to bed, he says, lifting his pencil and scribbling. Will only make her more suspicious if it stops transmitting, dumbass. She doesn't know I found it and it's better that way, he writes on the napkin, ever the strategist, you huff. So you're just gonna let her listen to you, you write on the napkin, forgetting to say something verbally for cover. It's so confusing to have two conversations at once. What are you doing? Mondes repeats, frustrated, as he can tell there's something both of you are not saying. It will lull her into a false sense of security, he writes on the napkin. It's nothing, Mondes. We were just arguing. You should go to bed, Alador says, handing the napkin to you, walking over to guide him back towards his room. What happened to your eye? The child says. Got hit by a cyclist on my way home. I'm thinking about suing, he lies, effortlessly, in the deadpan sense of humor typical of him, but his young ward often found difficult to parse. Get some sleep. We have a busy night tomorrow. He squints through the yellow lenses of his mask, and then, with a huff, storms back over to his bed and flops down on it. Alador closes the door behind him, walking back over to you. You stare at the napkin and then give up on it, setting it down and your pen. You look back towards the locked door of the boy, wondering if he was still listening. You want to work yourself to death, you say? Fine, but you should leave the kid out of it, you huff, glancing at your abandoned teacup. What, he says, and you wonder for a moment if he's playing stupid or if he truly is that oblivious. He's still young, Rosado. He can't keep up with the pace you live your life. He hasn't complained to me in months, the Olive Blood defends, crossing his arms. Because he knows you don't listen to him, you argue, gesturing at the pupa's door. So what, I should just have him sit around all night, he says, pulling his feet closer to his chair. That's not what I said, you defend. He opens his mouth and then closes it, shifting slightly in his chair, changing the position of his ice pack. His eyes close, frustrated with the scene before him, retreating into the comforting darkness of his mind, the quiet relief of damp eyelids to pupils that had been awake too long. He trails off. I want to be a better caretaker to him, he says quietly, than the matchmaker was to me. Stare. There's something unusually earnest about this. It's easy to tell from the way he swallows his words. Maybe he had succeeded in that, who's to say, but regardless of the intention, the outcome was the same. Well, congratulations, Rosado, on setting the bar so low it could be stumbled over. You wouldn't aspire for anything more for your descendant than he not be a prostitute? I can't let him go through what I went through. He needs a reliable, respectable job that can support him if something happens to me, he insists. Is orchestra really all that reliable, you reply. It is for Mondes, Alador argues. You've heard him. He already has a ridiculously impressive resume for his age. Even if they don't let him play in an official capacity, he could play in restaurants and street corners for the rest of his life and still make an honest living. He's really good. He's 4, Rosado. I don't think he should be working for at least a couple more sweeps. I wish I could give him that life, but I can't, he exhales, waving his cigarette smoke towards the cracked window. You pull your cane closer to your body. I don't think you tried that hard, you accuse. He turns to glare at you, affronted. You don't think I tried that hard, he mocks. I went into 7 figures of debt to save him. I rebuilt my life around this. I think there are better ways to protect him than forcing him into this. He doesn't want it. Why wouldn't he? You inhale and break eye contact. He can be so stubborn, so used to resistance on every front he rooted himself to the ground like an anchor, capable of weathering a constant assault from every angle but unwilling to budge for anything he could learn from. I think you want the attention and respect and the prestige you were never afforded in your pupahood when you were Alternia's best pianist and nobody gave a shit because you were a... You inhale the end of the sentence and then pause, your tone softening. And maybe it's not wrong of you to still carry that hurt, you say, taking a step towards him. But we run into the glaring problem that Mondes is not you. You think I'm this evil, scheming narcissist, Alador says, despite you saying nothing of the sort. Not everything I do has to have some grand, overarching motive. So what? Mondes quits orchestra. You do realize that half the reason I'm able to pull as many clients as I am is all the schmoozing I do around these pretentious events full of high bloods with deep pockets. You'll be able to figure out another way to get invited to parties, Rosado, you sigh. It's just, he wheezes, cradling his cigarette. Not practical right now, Vienna, he says with a tone of finality that indicated the conversation was over. Fine, you say, going back to the kitchen to microwave your tea. What do I know? I'm just some crazy old man, you complain. You could be nicer to him regardless. I am nice to him, he says. You watch your lukewarm tea turn tired circles in the microwave. Do you want a cup of tea, you say, changing the subject. He stares at you as if he can see through your turned back into your think pan, squinting at your silent disagreement. He could never leave well enough alone. Why continue a conversation that clearly just tired you both? But he had to be right. Is this about the mask thing, he prompts. Forget it, Alador, you say. I want nothing more than to be able to not give a shit, truly, he exhales. Is that so, you challenge, gripping the sanded wood of your cane as you stand, running your hands over it. Your back is still to him. I wish I could let him do whatever he wants, he emphasizes, sitting up, making a small noise of pain as he shifts his back in the ice pack. But I know how cruel trolls are, he breathes, disappointed. Better to acclimate him now, he says, turning his face towards the wall, pained. Someone will take it from him some night, and he needs to be prepared. There are 2 things I know high bloods hate more than anything, he says. He sighs, inhaling around his cigarette. First, a low bud laying claim to any kind of suffering, showing obvious, straightforward PSD like he does. Wearing that thing around is a constant reminder to everyone who sees him what the fleet did to him. Ironically, it makes it difficult to hide. Secondly, a low blood setting a boundary. You try to draw a line in the sand with a high blood and they'll overturn the entire beach just to spite you. And the answer to that is to let whatever theoretical high blood who throws a hissy fit get their way? His eyes narrow. There's something military about how Alador chooses to stand sometimes, never with a back towards an exit, always with his eyes a short turn of the head from every door. As he leans into corners of rooms, it's easy to imagine him toiled over a map, laying in wait poised for the next strike that could come at any moment, never truly letting down his guard. He gets up and walks past you towards the other window. Even for a troll so tall, his footsteps are so soft. His mouth leaks smoke like an engine around his cigarette as he stares at the pale light, a well-oiled machine. I pick my battles, he says, grinding his teeth. Carefully. He doesn't need a general, Alador, you say softly. He needs a father. And here's the second animatic, so take a look at your screen.
Well, I'm sure it's complicated, and I'm sure your story goes way back, but you're looking desperate lately, and now is not the time to look like that. I don't know if he did it, and I won't ask. There's a lot of good women with a lot of bad backs. Your man's in something heavy, it already looks bad. Careful what you carry on his behalf, and I'm sure he's thinking of you too. Not the type to snitch and run, but sometimes they say it's the plain truth. 99 problems. Well, I don't need to know, but there's a set of my keys left under your door. And if you need a place to sleep tonight, well, that's what family's for. I don't need to know, but I'd put on my best fresh little black dress and go get seen tonight. Work on that alibi of yours. I don't mean to be your mother, got my own kids to raise, and I don't aim to blow your cover. It's your own hell to pay. But the word on the street is a page out of Blake. Your man made money, but he made mistakes, and now the revelation's coming. Looks to you for a break. You've always been cunning with those brave escapes, but take a minute now, think this through. Give it a second and a bird's eye view. Think of the moments you got left to lose. Like, how much time are you really down to do? Well, I don't need to know, but there's a set of my keys left under your door. And if you need a place to sleep tonight, well, that's what family's for. I don't need to know, but I put on my best fresh little black dress and go get seen tonight. Work on that alibi. Now I've seen the way that you count your blessings with hatch marks on the wall, and I've seen you coming out of Sunday confession with the number list and all. Now I don't bow my head for supper, I never do kneel beside my bed, but it looks like your afterlife is covered. I hope on earth you're careful, kid.
You were 6, Mondez. I think the first reason he didn't tell you he was a prostitute was altogether obvious. You were too young, you wouldn't know what it means. He could have figured out a way to say it, he argues. The young man had set down his trophy bag and begun to pace back and forth in the music studio with a subtle franticness, in a way a kid would understand. The scene before you is achingly familiar. How many times in your life had you seen his father pace like that? If you handed him a cigarette, you could barely tell the difference. He wanted to spare you from that part of this world, you say, because he thought it would hurt you. Why are you defending him, he says as he turns, continuing his nervous march. I'm not, you pause. You're making excuses, he snaps. I'm telling you what I saw. How was I supposed to know, he pleads, his voice wavering. You weren't, and I don't blame you for that, you sigh. I'm sorry. You pull your cane closer to yourself. Stirred-up dust glittered in the moonlight that slips in fragments through the large, tall windows. When you think of Alador's hive, you most often picture this room. Centuries of gathered books and texts on music probably being eaten by moths on the bookshelves, a monument to his lifelong devotion to his craft. His obsession. He was ashamed, you say, exhaling. Mondez freezes midway through a step and stands still, his arms held stiff and straight like a puppet whose string was pulled. I was just a kid, he says, and some part of your heart splits at the seams, just when you thought it couldn't break any more than it already did. I know, Mondez, you say softly. I'm sorry. Smarter and older trolls than you fell for that psyop. It's not your fault, you assure. Then why tell me any of this, he wheezes, clenching his fists. You stare at him, making a small motion to offer him a hand, and then think better of it. I thought you'd want to know, you say. 4 sweeps ago, I wanted to know, he snaps, and you shrink, unused to hearing him raise his voice in that manner. 4 sweeps ago, I should have been told. I'm sorry, Mondez, you say, but you don't have to yell at me. He turns away from you, attempting to regain his composure, shaking. It's too late, he says quietly, his voice taut and flat, drained forcefully of affect. I know, you say, I just thought you should know is all. You swallow your words, trailing off. I don't know what happened that night, you pause. You were a kid, and you made the only choice you could with the information you had, you repeat. I just think he tried a little harder than you knew at all this, you admit. Even if he failed, say what you will about him, you look away at the pictures on the music studio's walls, young Mondes and Alador at events and contests covered with inches of dust. He knew what being indebted to Longs would do to his life. He knew in his body every inch of what it would cost him. But he didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. He said, who cares if it saves one life? If it saves one life, I'll pay anything. And he made good on that, you say, finally turning back to lock eyes with the young man. I know you'll probably never stop believing the worst of your ancestor, you say, but I constantly see the best of Alador in you. Abruptly, Mondes stands up, turns around with the stiffness and formality of a wind-up doll, and walks out the door, storming out of the hive into the open street below, not dignifying this with an answer. Wait, Mondes, you say, scrambling to follow him down the stairs, concerned. You finally break out of the hive door and call out to his retreating back. I'm sorry, Mondes, at least take the car, you yell, gesturing at the vehicle he's abandoned. I'll walk, he hisses. It's like 10 miles home, Rosado. Be serious, you plead. But he doesn't turn, and you know you couldn't catch up to him with your leg. You watch as he makes the same march out of this hive he did sweeps ago. The shape of the back of his cello case gets smaller and smaller in the distance, and then he turns a corner, and he's gone. There is another animatic here, so you might want to look at the screen.
I'm sitting down and pouring tea as if I do it every day. Go through the motions like the hands upon a clock. Though it feels right, a part of me knows that it's wrong. As if another's will had moved me. It's like I'm hitting all my marks, as if I'm acting in a play. So out of character, yet somehow not a shock. I'm like a software program caught inside an endless loop. Just bad code that keeps repeating. Is this the way it ends now? How could I not see this coming? My camera's cloudy lens now takes much darker pictures than before. I know by now you understand you're but a pawn upon a board. I've won the game but never gave up half my years. Life will continue just the way I've always planned. Let the cold hard justice crash the system. I've always stayed a step ahead, but you were with me all the way until I played upon a Shinigami's fears. For Misa's love, she wrote your name, then left upon a breeze into the sand of dust and darkness. This is the way it ends now. See it flicker, hear it humming. My power just extends now. Rem has written, you will write no more. I've seen through you right from the start. I've simply let you play your part. You'll never ever get away. Don't you see that you will die today? Is this the way it ends now? How could I not see this coming? The message that it sends now sounds exactly like a closing door. This is the way it ends now. See it blazing, hear it drumming. Feel how a minute spends now when you wish you had a minute more. Like a closing door. A minute.
When you arrive early in the evening, you find him strewn across the kitchen table, lingering by an open medicine cabinet, a pill organizer lying still. The soft pink light of the sunset laps gently at the edges of his form. You pause before gently walking over and touching his shoulder. The old man's eyes snap open, and he springs up, panicked, before he sees it's just you. "What are you doing, Rosado?" you say, wondering why he wasn't sleeping in his bed. "Ugh," he sighs, putting a hand to his head. "Mondes woke me up. He had a daymare," he says, still waking up. "What?" "He woke me up in the middle of the day," he repeats. "I heard that, but what's that got to do with you sleeping in the kitchen?" you reply. He waves his hand dismissively. "Let me get my coffee. What time is it?" he says. 7, you reply, watching him go over to the machine. He watches the coffee maker work, his eyes blank and tired. "He wanted to sleep in my bed," he says. "So you left him there?" you say, still a little confused regarding his train of thought. "No, I let him. It was late. I said, let me have my coffee," he says, pouring it into a mug. "Rosado, if a traumatized child comes to you for comfort in the middle of the day, you shouldn't just abandon him there," you reply. "That's not what happened," he says, his arms curling around himself defensively. "I was staying with him. He fell asleep. He stumbles. "He's still so fucking small, Vienna. He's so tiny," he says, his voice wavering unexpectedly. "It's so easy to forget when you're not, like, cuddling him, but God, he's so tiny," he repeats. "I got worried he wasn't taking his supplements," he says. You glance at the pill organizer, putting 2 and 2 together. Like many children born into intense poverty, Mondes had been deeply malnourished when Alador first brought him home. His ancestor had taken him to a doctor to make sure he was getting all of his proper nutrients, to make sure he didn't develop refeeding syndrome. "So you came in here to check his meds," you say, "and just left him there?" "I had to be sure," he insists. "It'll take him time to gain weight again, but I'm sure he's fine, Rosado. If he wasn't showing any symptoms, then there's no good reason for you to have abandoned him right after he had a daymare." "It's important he takes his meds," he says. "I know, but you could have gone back in at least," you say, glancing down the hallway. He follows your gaze, his brow furrowing. The order of events had all seemed so normal and rational in the soft, half-awake light of day, but it looks different now that the night had truly begun. "I was freaking out," he says eventually. "I didn't want to stress him." "You were freaking out," you say. "Why?" "I can't let him see me like that," he defends. "Rosado," you plead. "He needs stability right now," Alador rambles. "He still hasn't calmed down to the point he's not scared of getting gas attacked." "He knows you're lying to him, even if he doesn't know why," you reply, staring at the man. "I think," he pauses, "God, I hate freaking out in front of him. I just wish he wouldn't wear that thing," he says, and you know him well enough to guess he is talking about the mask, on which he has this strange fixation. "Well, maybe he'd trust you to take it off more if you didn't book it the moment he came to you for help," you retort. "I'm sorry," he sighs defensively. "I fucked it up, okay? Whatever, I panicked. I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes," he says, holding his coffee cup in both hands as if to steady it. "It's probably just factory made. It's probably the same kind they mass-produced. I mean, they probably made millions of masks like that," he says, with an airy laugh that is, unlike him, more unnerved than amused. But sometimes he grits his teeth, crossing his arms. "Sometimes, in some lights, I look at him and I swear it's not just the same kind," he pleads. "It's the exact same mask Sid had." He pauses and then chuckles, running a hand down his face, maybe just laughing to disguise the way his voice cracks in a different way. "There were millions of trolls on Corsica. What odds? I mean, it's impossible. She was dead long before his time," he rambles, covering his face. He justifies. He echoes. "I'm going crazy," he sobs. "I'm losing my fucking mind." And here is the last animatic, so you might want to look at the screen.
was a wanderer who found his way to God. Or maybe it was Lucifer under some false facade. Broken down and tattered, compound fractures in his sleeves. Shoe soles nailed together, but he never seemed to bleed. With one desperate push, his poor diaphragm forced out a plea. He said, one home burned down, one fell apart. One met a flood, and one was nothing from the start. Weapons built against me, well, they all seem to fail. But weapons built against my home, they always will prevail. So leave me my liver and leave me my skin. Leave me the way all those other homes did. But leave me a soul only by definition. I don't want to feel anything. My heart are snapping like catgut strings. Or set for me of agony. I wanna hear it, I don't wanna sing. I don't wanna breathe it completely. I am mourning. So break me anew. Well, I'll find every sick fuck I can, and I'll make them a deal. With no conscience, I'll make money, and I'll lie and cheat and steal. And that money won't bring happiness, but let me ask what does. Cause I found a place, and those sick fucks, well, they turned it to dust. And if I can't have justice, I might as well join the unjust. The floorboard smelled like lemonade, prepared for our arrival. The air was clean and crisp, just like a tonic for survival. Well, I wrote my name in charcoal on the bathhouse where we cried. So now I'm broken fundamentally and nobody gets why. So give me what drugs you got, give me your meds. Give me a cocktail to sedate my head. Abandon all hope of my moral salvation, they already took that from me. The sky was an angel of morning's heat, with language shiny curls of aquamarine. And when I close my eyes and when I had a dream, and when I think I might shut out completely, I can feel them in my hands, but I can't go back again. My heart are snapping like catgut strings. A symphony of agony. I don't wanna hear it, I don't wanna sing, I don't wanna breathe it completely. I am mourning, so break me a new. Turns out that the God he found was just a little girl sitting on a swing set. Just a little girl. She said, Mister, you look tired, I will let you go. But first, I think that what you're asking for, it just might make things worse.
Sometime a couple weeks after he had first been rescued from Corsica, Mondes and Alador sit on the edge of a balcony, overlooking the crowded Alternian night sky, stars made distant with light pollution, far and few in between. Both seem hesitant, unable to figure out what their relationship was meant to be to each other. Both too entangled in a loss that is suffocating and recent, a planet that fell apart mere moments after Mondes had left it. The blaze of the exploding Corsica in the transport window etched into their retina like a laser engraving. For a precious few weeks, there had been no argument between them. Before orchestra, before everything. The older Rosado is watching the child's hands, clumsy but patient, unusually steady for a boy so young, as they unfold a tiny orange. There is something so familiar about the scene that for a concentrated second, the weight he had balanced above him, that planet-sized grief he tried to forget he carried, envelops him like the arms of an old friend, and the man's eyes turn soft and glittering as he stares into the palms of the child next to him, so fragile and so ancient and so small. Eventually, the pupa, who had been solely occupied with the fruit, glances up, offering acknowledgement like a shaky tether. "What?" he says to the old man, catching his watering eyes. "I'm sorry," Alador says, pausing. He turns away, back towards the horizon. "You peel tangerines the same way an old friend of mine did. Like little stars." The child stares at him as that wasn't an explanation, not really. He feels a tantalizingly brief moment of connection slip away into the ether as his ancestor refuses to look at him. His expression tightens with subtle disappointment as he turns back to the fruit. "Okay," Mondes replies stiffly, not truly understanding what he was saying, for it surely would have given him pause if he did, the grief they did not know they shared. But Alador was unwilling and unable to bridge the gap between them, and they sat as they always did, just a little apart, a love that never truly made it across that tiny 2 feet of dead air. Just his bad luck that Mondes had been a child that needed love like lungs needed oxygen. Mondes had looked through the rubble for the corpses of family and friends, found in their blank dead eyes only how little the universe cared about him. Like rhubarb creaking as it grows in the pitch dark, stretching its leafy palms to the sky for sunlight that was only a memory, Mondes had needed love. Like a fly in the summertime bumping over and over against the windowsill, knowing freedom was so close, he could see it but couldn't ever break through. Mondes had wanted love in the parts of the body where other children kept love. Mondes stored in auto-cannibalizing darkness, a subtraction that ate him alive like a parasite. Love is the foundation of all things. A body without it will collapse itself at the slightest touch. There could not have been a troll in the universe who more badly needed the love that Alador had withheld from him.